It is well known that traditional real estate investing involves purchasing a property to rent it out long term, collect steady fixed income every single month, and have to repair a faucet or two every once in a while. But as real estate investing evolves, so does its strategies. A real estate investing strategy that has become more and more popular over the past year or so has been midterm rentals. And let me just say the hype is real because there is a lot of money to be made with these midterm rentals. That is why in today's video, we will be going over long-term versus midterm rentals and which strategy is best for you. At the end of this video, you should have a clear understanding of what long-term and midterm rentals are, the pros and cons of each, what it takes to operate each strategy, which strategy is more profitable. And at the very end, I will show you a website that can help you find comparable midterm rentals in your area so that you can research, see what you can charge for your midterm rental. So make sure you stick around to the end and hit that like button if you find this video valuable. It really helps out my channel. So quickly, let's summarize what a long-term rental is. A long-term rental is what you think about when you think of traditional real estate investing. Like I said earlier in the video, you buy a property to rent it out long-term. You hopefully find a tenant that will want to lease from you for 12 to 24 months, and hopefully they will stay there as long as possible and reduce the amount of turnover you have. You sign a lease for a fixed rental amount, meaning that the price cannot go up or go down during the duration of their lease. And when that lease does come to an end, you negotiate a newer price for a little bit more because of inflation, and then you hopefully keep them for another 12 to 24 months. With long-term investing, you really want to hold on to a good tenant as long as possible because you know they'll pay rent and you know that you don't have to turn over the property, spend money on renovations, spend money on marketing, and then get another tenant. Now, what about midterm rentals? A midterm rental is a perfect mix between a long-term and a short-term rental. Essentially, it is a rental that targets traveling professionals for a lease longer than 1 month but less than 1 year. The idea is as these understaffed hospitals and businesses are bringing in these employees for 3 to 6 months at a time, you can provide housing for the duration of their contract. And plus, typically these businesses and hospitals will actually give them a stipend for housing specifically. It is actually very lucrative because long-term landlords actually don't want to rent for less than 12 months because they don't want to have to deal with turnover. And vice versa, these short-term rentals that are typically Airbnbs would love to rent out to these traveling professionals for their duration of their contract, but Airbnb and shorter-term rentals charge a premium to where it is a little out of reach for these traveling professionals, even with their stipends. So being able to offer that happy medium to traveling professionals could allow you to capitalize on a lot of money. But one thing before we move forward is that with midterm rentals, you will have to furnish the property as if it was a shorter-term rental, but more on that later. Now let's get into the pros and cons of long-term versus midterm rentals. First, let's start off with the pros of long-term rentals. The first being there's less turnover. As I said earlier, longer term rentals will want to rent out for between 12 and 24 months at a time, knowing that they locked in their tenants and that they will get a fixed amount for that duration. They won't have any turnover and they'll just have to do some repairs on the property as they come up. Opposed to shorter term rentals where every 3 to 6 months when someone's contract does come to an end, you will have to start marketing and get a new person in, causing a turnover, having to clean the apartment, do some repairs to it before that new person moves in. The second pro to longer term rentals is steady income. Like I mentioned, the long-term rentals get a fixed amount for a duration of 12 to 24 months. Meaning the understanding between the tenant and landlord is that the tenant will pay the landlord a fixed amount, what they agree upon, and the landlord will provide housing and repair anything that needs to be repaired. Me personally that owns rental real estate and my portfolio consists of all long-term rentals, there's something said about being able to sleep well at night, knowing that you have locked in tenants, knowing what you're going to get in rent every single month so you can plan for the future. And lastly, there's typically a larger rental pool when it comes to long-term rentals. You have to understand that midterm rentals is a very niche way to invest. And typically, if you own a buy and hold, you will have a lot more people to choose from when actually renting the property out. Now, the first pro with midterm rentals is that you can charge more, and there's a couple factors to this. The first being that you have to furnish the property, so you will actually have to pay an expense to furnish the property, make sure it looks good, and advertise it so that you can attract a professional coming out of town and have them want to choose your rental over others. Plus, you are paying all of the utilities and everything's included in the rent that you charge. Secondly, like I mentioned earlier, longer term rentals typically don't want to rent for less than a year, and shorter term rentals are a little bit too high in pricing. So offering a midterm rental can give you the opportunity to charge a premium and a lot more than what you would get as a longer term rental, since you are providing only 3 to 6 month stays. The second pro is typically you'll have higher quality tenants, because these hospitals and businesses aren't just bringing anyone into their city, providing housing for them and paying them very well just to come work at their place. No, these are highly educated young professionals and have been vetted. And on top of that, typically these businesses will provide a stipend for housing, which just is another layer of security for you as the landlord. And lastly, your opportunities for growth increases a ton. Since with midterm rentals, you will be able to charge more for rent and you will be cash flowing more, you will be able to save at a higher rate to where you can reinvest and buy more properties to then grow your portfolio, grow your net worth, and grow the amount of income you make every year. The first con for long-term rentals is that you charge less. It is just a known fact that you will charge less because you're not furnishing the property and they will be paying the utilities separately typically. Secondly, you are locked into a 12 to 24 month lease, whichever one you choose, so you will have to stick it out with that tenant, even if you are seeing comparable properties rent for so much more. And if you were to purchase a property with an existing tenant that has a long lease still ahead of them, then you will have to keep that tenant and not be able to increase the rent until that lease is finished. And lastly, turnover can eliminate cash flow. So since you are renting out long term and you're probably going to cash flow less than if you were going to do shorter or midterm rentals, if you have a turnover to where you have to do a lot of renovation, it will kill a couple months of cash flow. Depending on if you have a property manager that's going to charge a set fee for putting another tenant in there, or you're doing it yourself, hiring out contractors to come in, fix up the property, you could be losing couple months of cash flow at least. Now let's go to the cons of midterm rentals. Now midterm rentals is going to be very hands-on, because once you place a tenant into your property, you're going to have to start marketing for the next person in the next 3 to 6 months. Not only that, but you have furnished the entire property and you're paying for the utilities. So if something were to happen with the furniture or a repair needs to come up, you will have to manage that tenant and make sure that you get those things fixed as soon as possible while you're marketing to get a new tenant the next time around. The second con is that it will take longer to turn over, meaning that it's very hard to line up consecutive traveling professionals to rent out your property back to back without any space in between. You might have one tenant leaving and not have the next one coming for another month or two. So if you don't do anything, your property will be sitting vacant and you'll be losing money. And the last con is that you will have to furnish the property, so it is an initial expense that you will have to pay. And you might be thinking to yourself, that's not really a con, but when you're going up and competing against other midterm rentals, you want your property to stand out. So with the furnishing you have in that property and the design that you have throughout the home will determine if someone's going to choose your rental over someone else's. Now, the operations of a long-term and midterm rental are very different. Let me explain. With a long-term rental, it's very simple. You put up your property for rent on Zillow, Facebook Marketplace, other platforms to where it would reach out to the masses. They will start applying to your property. You pick one and place a tenant. Once you place that tenant, you have 12 to 24 months to where you kind of just set it and forget it. You collect the rent and you don't have to worry about getting another tenant. While your property is occupied, you may have systems in place to where they have a number to call or an email to email you with repairs and maintenance that needs to be done to the property, to where you can respond to them and get that done as soon as possible, or you can push it off to your contractor. Obviously, if you have more rentals, then it's going to take up a little bit more time. But if you only have a couple rentals, it shouldn't really take much of your time every single week. But with midterm rentals, it's a little bit different. There's a lot more marketing and networking overall that goes into midterm rentals, because when you just get the tenant into your rental property for that 3 to 6 month period, you will start to have to market for your next tenant, because you're not just marketing to the general population where there's a lot of people looking for rentals. You're in a niche investing strategy, so you will have to go after your next client. A great way to do this is to do some outreach to local businesses and hospitals that do bring in traveling professionals. You can ask for their vendor list and see if you can be a part of that. So when a professional accepts a traveling position, HR for that company can send out their vendor list with you being a part of it, meaning that they could reach out to you and see if you have their dates available. If you become very connected with that network, you would do very well with midterm rentals. Now, the website I wanted to share with you is furnishfinder.com. This is a great and very popular website for any midterm rental host or anyone looking for a midterm rental. So my advice is to go on this website, check it out, find comparables to your rental properties, and see if this is something that could be profitable for you. You can look up the prices, you can see how much competition you actually have in your area. It is a great resource to help you decide if midterm rental could be a strategy for you. I really hope that this was beneficial to you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more real estate investing content. I appreciate all of you, and I will see you in the next one. Happy investing.